Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Mastermind Minutes. My name is Gary Occhiogrosso. I am the managing partner for Franchise Growth Solutions. As most of you who follow this podcast know, Franchise Growth Solutions is one of the leading franchise development and franchise sales organizations in North America. I'm also the publisher of FranchiseMoneymaker.com, which is an online magazine for entrepreneurs, franchisors, franchisees. And for those of you who are joining us maybe for the very first time here on Mastermind Minutes, it's a very simple concept, very simple podcast. We have one guest, we ask one question or have one topic, and we get one expert answer. And the key is that we do it in minutes, not hours, which we realize times can be a tease or just not enough information. So if you want to reach out to our guest or learn more about the company that we'll be talking about today, we will embed a link and we will have all that contact information set up for you. So very simple. And today, my guest is Tom Wood, and Tom is the president and CEO of Floor Coverings International. He joined that team back in '05 in that position, but previously served 3 years as vice president of the parent company, which is FirstService Brands, overseeing the strategy and the operational direction of several brands in their portfolio. Tom initially joined FirstService Brands back in 1985. I was a Dunkin' Donuts franchisee back then.
Awesome.
And has worked in a few of the sister companies associated with that parent company, including CertaPro Painters, both as the franchise executive, and worked with CertaPro Painters in a vice president capacity, and part of the founding team and president of the Franchise Development Center, which they have, which oversaw the expansion and the development of the brands like CertaPro Painters and California Closets and Paul Davis Restoration. So we're really excited to have Tom with us because he's got a good, deep background in franchising. And as most of you know, I sort of tend to be on the restaurant side. Tom is here on the service brand side, which is great because we don't often talk about that. So Tom, thank you so much for being with us today. I truly appreciate you taking the time. And I realize it's a short and brief intro. So before we get into the question, perhaps you tell us a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more about Floor Coverings International, and then we'll get into the question.
Sure. Thank you, Gary. And thanks for that introduction. It was interesting for me to hear that. And certainly the part that resonated for me was your deep background on the restaurant side. And certainly I'm coming up now on 40 years on home services side. And I will share from my perspective, all my years in franchising, when I go to the IFA and things like that, I look at you restaurant folks and say, I do not understand what you do or how you do it or how those businesses run, but I absolutely have a deep respect for the side of franchising that you have been involved in. Certainly for myself, as you just noted, I started in franchising in 1985, and the early part of my time in franchising, 1985, and a few years later, I was actually a franchise owner. So when I look back at my start in franchising and what really gave me the root and the foundation of who I am and what we do here in the organization, I will say it certainly has that air and that foundation of being on the franchise side and having to learn and understand what it means to be successful as a franchise owner. Certainly way back when, the time that I had at College Pro Painters, and then later on at CertaPro Painters as one of the founders there as both a franchise owner, and then later on the franchisor has really laid the foundation for what we have here at Floor Coverings International. So here at Floor Coverings International, just a little bit of an introduction of who we are and what we do. We service the flooring industry. We like to think of ourselves as a full service franchise opportunity in the flooring industry that provides to a customer the very best experience in all of the flooring industry. And at the time that we acquired Floor Coverings International, and when I got started here way back when in, let's call it 2005, the one piece of clarity that we always had was in this $100 billion industry that we have in the flooring world. If we were going to be in this industry, we wanted to be the very best customer experience that any customer across US and Canada would be able to have. That has been the first foundation. The second foundation that we had was we wanted our franchise owners to not be what in the early 2000s was considered a franchise in the home service industry, which was a work from home, man in a van type concept. We wanted to have an executive model business that allowed for a franchise owner in the flooring industry and home services to build really that large organization that allowed them not only cash flow or net profit on an annual basis, but certainly equity value at a later time that they may look to exit their business. But then along with that, the quality of life that you can only get in being self-employed and having an organization of a certain size. So I would take all that and really wrap it up in the following. Our vision for Floor Coverings International was to be the highest rated customer experience in all of flooring. And I can tell you, we are there right now. We have an 87 NPS score. We have 4.8 stars across all of our franchisees, US and Canada. We are absolutely known as the highest rated flooring experience. And then we want an experience for our franchise owners where they have an opportunity to build a large equity-based business that provides for them the quality of life that you can really only get in a great entrepreneurial experience. And that is what we really love here about Floor Coverings International. Are those our
That's terrific. Absolutely terrific. But before we get into the question, because you said some things there that sort of like ring true with me, and I'm a student of Michael Gerber's E-Myth Revisited. Actually, I sort of use that book as required reading at a class that I teach at NYU. So I'm a believer in the system, and I'm a believer in making sure things are operated in such a way that it's not to your, you described it very nicely. I call some service businesses that don't operate such as yours, I call it chucking a truck.
That's right.
That to me is not a business, that's a job.
That's right.
And we have a client, Resi Brands, and the interesting thing there is that, like you, they focus on the customer experience, and it's very important because I relate it to the restaurant business. People always talk about customer service, and I say, well, wait a minute, customer service is only one piece of the customer or the guest experience.
That's right.
In sort of a business like a contracting business or work in the home, and I'm really bad at that stuff. I don't know anything about that stuff. So for me, I have this inherent fear or maybe mistrust of like contractors or stuff. But when I deal with brands, and I've had CertaPro Painter do my house,
Awesome.
when I deal with a brand, as with anything else in franchising, that they follow a system and the person shows up and they're sort of in a uniform, they're not like covered in sawdust. It starts to build confidence.
Yes.
So that to me is all part of the guest experience. So I hear you. And that sort of leads into our question, because you're not simply looking for people who are going to swing hammers or turn dials or make muffins, okay? You're looking for people who are going to supply and live up to that brand standard of that high quality customer experience, executive mentality, quality of life, build a business. So that's a bit of a chore in terms of finding and selecting franchisees, because not everyone thinks like that. So first, tell me, like, what are the top traits that you would look for in an individual to say, okay, this person is a good fit and matches our culture and our brand and would end up being successful, assuming they follow the system and work hard. But so what are the qualities and traits that you look for?
Absolutely. So Gary, when I hear that question, I take it again as somebody that's been in this industry, in this business for a long time, and I internalize it into, okay, that question of who makes a great franchisee, I then take it and reverse engineer it into what really is the essence behind the question. And when I hear it, what I hear is, what makes a great franchisee in our system, and what is it about our system that really requires that type of a franchise owner? And when I take the question and slightly modify it into those optics, what I do is I come back and say, what is it about Floor Coverings International that takes this industry in flooring, which I'll share, the industry average net promoter score in the flooring industry is 38. So that certainly goes to what you just expressed. Most homeowners, before they get a home service or certainly a flooring contractor to come over, there's anxiety that's attached with it. And that anxiety is real because most of the experiences are pretty subpar. And then here we are when I advocate, we have an 87, and I'll tell you that is pure and that is authentic, and every single customer is pulled in that 87. What is it at the end of the day that delivers that 87? Then we look into franchising. What is generally the difference between top performing franchisors and franchisors that are maybe not? You gave a very eloquent description of some of that early on. And my learning and my philosophy in franchising is the franchisor's role and responsibility begins with having a clear system that is easy to understand and not complicated to execute. Because the more complicated it is to execute that system in order to deliver an experience, the higher the likelihood is that somebody's just not going to be able to deliver it. And they get so caught up in trying to check off boxes, if you will, of a system that they actually forget to lift their eyes and look at the customer, open their ears, listen to the customer. And at the end of the day, that is really what our experience is built on. So to bring it right back to your question, our customer experience, which is an authentic 87 Net Promoter Score, begins with the fact that we start our process in the customer's home so that we can understand the customer's environment and ask them a few very simple questions, which I'm going to take our whole system and boil it down to the following. Gary, what is most important to you in this project? Of course, you're going to describe to us, you want a beautiful floor at the end and things like that. But what we are really going to try and learn from you is what is it about your home, your environment, the way that you live in it, that if I deliver those couple of things, you're going to be a satisfied customer. I can share with you, we and most of our competitors deliver a good floor. Most of our competitors do a really good job at the floor, but where they fall short, and I know that we excel, is if you tell me the most important thing is be at the home by 8 o'clock every morning because you and your family have to leave for work or school or whatnot, I'm going to take and listen to that is the most important thing over and above deliver a good floor.
Yep.
If I can deliver that, you're likely going to give me a great score at the end.
Yep. You're 100%. If you were to ask me, okay, I'm gonna say, all right, you've just asked me that. I would tell you there's three things. There's four. Obviously, the fourth is I expect a high quality workmanship on my floor. Okay.
Yep.
Fine. But what are the things that like give me a little anxiety is A, are you going to show up on time?
Yep.
If you tell me the job is going to take 1 day, 2 days, 10 days, whatever you're going to tell me, live up to that. Don't tell me 3 days and then you're there 9 days. Okay.
Exactly.
And please clean up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Nailed the golden three.
Those are the top three. Okay.
Yes.
That's all I care about is those top three. And I'm anticipating I'm going to get a good floor. So I agree. If you can deliver that, that is, again, for a buyer like me of a service like yours, that's the roadblock, because it's not about, do I think I'm going to get a good floor? Because I've seen the work and I've seen great, but what is this? Is this going to be like trauma? Am I going to have what is going to be my anxiety for the next 3 weeks that I got this person here, or 2 weeks, or whatever it is? So I hear you. So how do you sort of, and we have this issue, obviously, on the FSO side, on the sales side, when we're looking for franchisees for restaurants, how do you dig into a person's personality and soul, so to speak, in only a few short meetings? In the grand scheme of things, if you sign a franchise agreement with someone for 5 or 10 years, the interview or the vetting process, the sum total of it between calls and FDD follow-ups and discovery days might only be 5 hours. Absolutely. And then you're going to deal with somebody for 5 or 10 years. Well, how do you dig into that? What's your process? What are you looking for, and how do you get there?
And Gary, I know that that this isn't going to surprise you. You and I have been in franchising for a long, long time. So I'm going to say it's actually a really simple answer, but the devil is in the details. It's a simple answer, that, of course, you then have to execute on flawlessly. It's not a complicated answer that you have to get most of it right. The simple answer to this is we just unpacked the most important thing to a customer is delivering on the things that actually don't have anything to do with the floor that they're going to be living in.
Absolutely. Yep.
When you are interviewing a candidate for the business, I am going to assume by the time that they come to our discovery day that they have the skills to run the business. They can lead two salespeople, and we can check that very easily on their resume. They understand the value of marketing and doing a profit and loss statement so that they're making money at the end of the month. Again, those are relatively easy boxes to check. But the most important trait is, first of all, will they ask that question of the customer in the beginning, and will they make sure that it gets transferred over to the installers and to the people in the business? And when they have salespeople in the business, will they require that this is that soft piece that they are asking the customer and such? That is the simple thing to execute, but most important to follow up on it. And it's as follows. You look at that franchise owner's background. You look at the things that they've been involved in. You understand what the most important pieces of their own leadership qualities are. And it's things like, do they take developing the people that they're responsible for and put it up to the highest level of importance? The only way that you can develop your people when you've been an executive coming from another team is by asking your people, what do you want to be developed to? For example, and then understanding, is this person want to be a senior leader? Does this person want to have nobody reporting to them? And then tailoring the development around the needs of the individual. If this person is involved in their children's sports, are they only involved in whether or not their child excels, or are they interested in the experience that their child and the other children are having? And that can come from what's most important to you in leading the team. And oftentimes you'll hear things like, well, we want the team to excel and learn to work well, but we want the kids on the exit interview, essentially, and the parents to say that they loved being on the team. Those are the things that ultimately, at the end of the day, that you can lean on, that franchise owner just asking the customer, Gary, what's most important to you in this job? It's a simple question, but most people will skip right over it because the owners or potential franchisees look to the floor and say, I'm going to assume that the most important thing is deliver you a floor. Well, that's what all of our competitors do, and that's why they have a 38. So bring it right back. It is understanding we need a franchise owner that knows that it's the experience that's the most important. There's only one or two questions that need to be asked, but you have to ask them. And then those are the pieces to make sure that are delivered for each and every customer.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot there. So let me just sort of rewind and unpack a little bit.
Sure.
Okay. So first of all, I'll tell you, when we do a franchise development for a brand that is not yet a franchise, uh, I ask this, it's a contrarian question, but I ask it because it tells me a lot about the individual entrepreneur that wants to franchise his business, but it ties into what you're talking about. I will ask again, it's a restaurateur in most cases. I'll say, all right, so tell me about your brand and tell me about the points of differentiation. And in the explanation, you can't tell me about the food. You can't use that as part of the explanation. I don't want to say most, many have no ability to answer that question, which
Sure.
tells me a lot. Doesn't mean that they can't get there. It just means that they've never thought about it that way.
Yep.
Okay. And we all know it's about branding and the experience and the guest service and everything else. So that to me is a big, big piece that you sort of touch on. The other piece about team and leadership and knowing, Jim Collins in Good to Great has this thing about it's not only having the right people on the bus, but they need to be sitting in the right seat. And I don't know. I think Albert Einstein, I'm paraphrasing, had this. I don't know the exact quote, but if you don't expect a fish to climb a tree or you'll be disappointed, kind of thing. Okay. So understanding what people can and can't do or what they gravitate to on the team member side.
That's
okay.
right.
On the franchisor side, or the franchisee side, I think is very, very important because it's just human nature that people will sort of default to the things they like to do, which may not necessarily be what they're good at, and it
That's
may
right.
not necessarily be what they should be doing in the seat they're sitting in. If
That's
you're the leader of the company, if you're the owner, if you're the leader, you should be out there building engagement in your community, uplifting your team members and doing that. But if you don't like to do that, if you're the guy that wants to scrape the floor, well, you might be good at that, but that's not what you're supposed to be doing.
that's right. And
So I
Gary,
hear you. The third piece to that I'll comment on is if you are able to, and it's kind of like a pachinko machine, you kind of shake all that out and you get to that, then the key is now the person has the knowledge. And I always say knowledge is not power.
that's right.
The execution of knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Are
Yeah,
they going to execute, and are they going to execute on the system?
for
So
sure.
when you get to that point where you believe you have the right person who's going to be connected to the brand value, do you have any further sort of, inquisition, for the lack of a better word, where you want to understand, is this person, and this is going to sound, when I say this, people go, well, what do you mean? Is this person too entrepreneurial to be a franchisee? Are they going to want to reinvent? Are they going to want to tinker? Are they going to want to create? And we all know, I believe we all know, that like the best franchisees, probably statistically, although I don't have a stat on it, the best franchisees are like generally former military people because
Mm.
they just kind of know how to follow a system and they're great at it. How do you determine the person's whether they're enthusiastic and they're passionate about the brand, or whether they're just overly entrepreneurial and now maybe they're going to want to start, hey, I got a better way of doing this? How do
Yeah.
you deal with that?
Well, and that's a very interesting piece. I'm probably going to answer this a little differently than what you normally get. So let me first start with, yes, a franchise system has a system. We need to operate within the confines of the system, or within, not the confines, wrong word, the parameters, essentially within reason. So yes, of course, we are a franchise system. We've got 250 franchisees. We're the highest rated in the flooring industry. We have processes. And as a general rule, we all need to operate in the sandbox. But that being said, there's two principles here that I believe really help us excel as an industry leader and allow our organization to have the alignment that we have and that we enjoy. The first part of that is our fifth core value. And I know you can't read the core values that are over my shoulder, but they're there for a reason.
I'm curious about them. I'm
Yep.
curious about them.
Our fifth core value is the one that me as the CEO, I spend the most time reminding people about this core value, what it means, and asking them, tell me what this means to you and how you live it. And the fifth core value is engage in the community and make it fun. Now, that means a
Absolutely.
whole variety of things. From last week was our annual convention. What that means is for us and for our franchisees, plug in with the network and find a way to make it enjoyable. Essentially, it's not just business. Now, I'll cross all the way over to a franchise owner's engagement with their customers. Essentially, your customers are part of the community. Are you engaging with them and ensuring that they enjoyed it? Was it fun working with you? Like, it doesn't have to be a party, but is there a smile on their face? That's what you're leaving them with. Now, that is the core value that I find is the primary difference between our haves and our have-nots. The other core values are equally important, but this is the one that is not always easy for somebody to understand its value. Now, where I'll take this in transition, the role of being an entrepreneur in franchising. There's a word that I heard somebody else, another leader in franchising, use that I subscribe to. It's a franchipreneur, meaning you're a franchise, but you
Great
also
word.
are a bit
Yeah.
of an entrepreneur. Ron Feldman at Apple Pie
Ah,
Academy. Good
okay.
buddy.
I know Ron. Yes.
Yeah, good buddy of mine, and he reminds me of that. But here's what this means to me. I believe as the franchisor, this is probably part of me being rooted as an early franchisee, is the best innovations in a franchise organization nearly always come from your franchise owners. And
Great.
as the franchisor, and I'll speak for me personally as the CEO here, if I'm not watching, listening, engaging and learning from our franchisees that are out there grinding it out every day to try and get better and get better and get better, then we become stagnant as an organization. And then certainly the franchisor, we become disconnected from the great stuff that really good franchisees bring. So I will share. We know and we believe, and I believe this as much as I'm saying, the best stuff, the best innovation, the best practices come from franchisees that have been empowered and expected to innovate and get better. Our franchise owners are the ones that are with customers every single day. Now, our franchisees, they don't look at the data and the dashboards all day. I'm in my office, I can stare at dashboards and things all day, and I have to share that information with them to help them see opportunities. But equally, our franchise owners are with customers every single day. I'm not with customers every single day. We have this ability to share and innovate together. But boy, I have to know as the franchisor that there is going to be more innovation coming from franchisees than I'm going to be able to bring. And it's my job to see it, to capture it, and then to share that across the network and then program it, if you will. So
Yep.
I'm an advocate of franchisee leadership. Put them in that role, encourage them and give them resources. I mean, real resources to get better and better and better, and then take that and share that across the network.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. I often remind people in the food side that, the Big Mac was created by a franchisee.
Mhm.
Obviously, the franchisee-franchisor relationship has to be such that there's a mechanism for information and ideas to flow through. It can't be random or rogue, and most good franchisors have that mechanism, whether it's a franchise advisory council or some mechanism there. So I totally agree. You did say something that I think really underscores and really highlights the integrity that you take to this, and that is, if you said one of your core values, one of your positions that are sitting there in back of you is the expectation is the franchisee is engaging in the community and really building those relationships. Well, you said that one of your top responsibilities is to engage with your franchisees, and I view that as the franchisees are your community, so
They are.
you're practicing engaging in that community. So I just think that's terrific. Any last thought you have on this topic, about selecting the right franchisee that matches the brand, whether it's your brand or anything else? There's obviously some fundamentals. Any last word on this?
Sure. It's my core belief that in a well-led, operated franchise organization is a symbiotic relationship between franchisee and franchisor. The franchisee has a very clear role in their business success and the success of the organization. The franchisor has a very clear role in their responsibility and the success of the organization. But the two entities have to work together and be mutually aligned. But at the same time, understand me as the franchisor, I can never operate a franchise to the same level that a franchisee can. That's where their level of expertise comes in. And at the same token, a franchisee won't lead the franchisor with the same level of expertise, but we need to be able to sit at the table together with that same mutual respect. And that's where that foundation of the question you just asked comes for me. We and I and our team need to have very clear understanding of what it means to be a great franchisee here. And then those are the skills and the traits that we have to make sure that we are looking for. But at the same time, help that franchise owner know and understand the role of the franchisor and what we have to bring together as well. So going through that process and making sure that the two of us are coming along on this together is crucially important. But at the end of the day, the franchise owner has to be able to execute the model, lead the business really well. And in our case, that underlying two traits that they need to have is lead a team enthusiastically. So lead that team to engage in the community and make it fun. And at the same time, deliver to that customer that level of expectation that we are the highest rated flooring company in all of North America. And when our franchise owners are coming in understanding my two responsibilities are deliver that experience and make sure that I have a great team executing on the franchise model, we do pretty well.
Yeah, I can see it. And for those of you listening, once again, we've been speaking with Tom Wood, the president and CEO of Floor Coverings International. Tom, and by the way, I so totally appreciate your authenticity in the message that you're bringing here today. If someone wants to reach out, learn more about Floor Coverings International, what's the easiest way? Is it a website, an email? And we'll post it in the bio of the webcast. But just curious if you want to just cite it out, shout it out for us.
Flooringfranchise.com. That's the place to go. And to learn more about the #1 rated flooring company in North America, it's floorcoveringsinternational.com. But to get more information about our franchise, flooringfranchise.com.
Wow, very simple, very, very easy. Tom, thank you so much for being here. I anticipate I will see you at the International Franchise
Most certainly will.
Convention in Phoenix, so we'll have to match up. But thank you so much for being with us today. I truly
Thanks, Gary.
appreciate it.